I got 3 minutes. Is that what you got? I got 3 minutes. And we have 4. We're expecting Mr. Cronin, are we not? We expecting Mr. White? They can be outside having their party. You guys all have these sheets in your book? Do you have that? That's the stuff that we talked about with Joe. Yep. There's Joe. I'll share it with you. All right, we're at 6 o'clock, so let's get started on our work session. So we have 3 items on the work session for tonight. We'll start with the 2022 to 2026 capital plan. Then we'll talk about consent agenda items, and if time allows, we'll talk about COVID protocols in schools. So one of the things that I kind of wanted to talk about with the capital plan is as we get closer to a lot of things, getting final approval for different repairs and things that need to go on, we'll get those individually, but this is kind of our time to look at the overall 4-year plan of what we have laid out in a capital and strategic plan and see if there's anything that we want to talk about to maybe, Mr. Cronin was talking about getting some more visibility inside of some of these things and really kind of digging into the details a little bit more. So with that, I would open it up to anybody if they want to talk about any items in the capital plan.
Donna and Brett Statler did a full list. We'll go through it, but I'd like to say one thing to start out with.
Can you pull one of those mics towards you?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
There you go.
We had a meeting, and Brent Statler and Donna have had a lot more experience looking at these than I have, and they pulled out some stuff, and we can kind of go through that list, but I don't have as much issues with this if we understand that this is a plan. And as a plan, it's subject to change, and we can do what we want to do with it down the road when the actual expenditure items come before the council.
Right.
But quite often in the last 10 years, we hear, well, you approved it in the plan, you need to improve it now, and I'm not going for that no more. So that being said, if it's like a master plan for a county, it's a good idea where we're headed, but we don't necessarily have to go that direction. So I hope that we could do the same thing with that. And beyond that, I don't know if you all went through this. I think there's 22 points, and maybe, I don't know if the administration, have they seen these?
It was forwarded to
Joanne, you have comment on some of this stuff?
Yeah, and we actually have a brief presentation to talk about a couple of things, too.
Okay.
And Councilman, to your point, though, I'd like to start off making a note. You know, this is a 5-year plan, and especially as you get past the first year or two, especially past the first year, we haven't attempted to have what the departments are raising that they may need. We're not attempting to have it conform to any budgetary expectation at that point. They've raised to us that they think they're going to need something. We're trying to keep it on the radar, but especially as you get 3 years out, things end up being very different. From this plan, and we'll look at any aspect of it that you want, but from this plan, I think one of the most important things is to look at 22 with the understanding that we have gone through the 22 requests, and we have tried to make those fit what we expect would be financially available. And you will see those things in the 22 budget. So I think that's when we say to you, well, it was in the plan. Sometimes we're not very specific, but not only will these things be in the plan, but they'll end up in the budget. So it would be helpful, especially with regard to the 22 items, if the council saw something they were concerned about or they felt needed to be delayed, that you would raise those to us, because otherwise we'll move them into a budgetary consideration as we go into delivering the budget to you at the beginning of November. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So if, Bob, you have the clicker?
Yeah, and I think we need Ashley to get that onto the side screen for us also. There we go. Okay.
So our first point in the overview kind of goes to what I just said, that this document's going to show known and projected needs over 5 years. But I want to point out it's for all the funds. So, and we'll go through those in a minute, but I would say that the biggest difference in the last couple of years between what we used to give you and what we're giving you now, these last few years, is our Director of Facilities Maintenance and our Director of Information Systems, who have done a lot of work to try to actually finalize what their plans are and what their budgets are to give us some stability. You know, we were always up and down, and I know you saw a lot of special presentations as we were moving in and out. And what we have now are 2 directors who are on a path, they understand the path that they're on, and they are giving us a lot of feedback about financially, what does that cost the county to have those type of services, those type of software packages available. So you will see, especially in those departments, I think it's important that you look at what's in those plans. The plan document doesn't have certain things in it. So annual maintenance contracts, bond payments, the fleet maintenance, those are things that kind of come off the top. So then what we focus in are new projects or projects that are going to roll forward. If we get to the next slide. So when I said this covers all of the revenue sources, so we're used to talking to you all a lot about the capital improvement tax, but the parks use tax is in here, the road and bridge tax is in here, the transportation tax is in here, emergency communications, which is what Jeff Smith operates the 911 and part of the radio system off of, not all of it. The special statutory funds, and this year that'll include Bob's shuttered venue operations grant as well as the American Rescue Plan dollars. And so in fact, that'll be a good transition to Bob and let him talk about those 2 new funding sources.
So I think you're generally aware of these 2 funding sources. The first one on top is something that we're very grateful for, actually. It's we know that one of the large capital needs that's facing the county right now has to do with the Family Arena. Family Arena is 22 years old, and it's showing its age. And there are some things here that the SVOG grant came along, provided us with $2.9 million worth of funding. And what we've identified there are the projects you see on those first 4 bullets. Great deal of work on the inside that will help with the aging infrastructure with seats. The ribbon boards and video boards are approaching end of life. Those were purchased from Daktronics back in 2013, maybe, something like that. And they are no longer going to be supported here soon. So this money comes at a good time there. The LED concourse signage, if you've been in the Family Arena and you see as you're walking down the concourse, you see these rectangular things hanging down off the ceiling that some of them have signs in them. Well, those structures actually had huge tube TVs in them at one point in time that broadcast the games as they were going on, or concerts and all that stuff. But all those old monuments to old technology are part of this project to update the interior and the concourse signage and lighting areas. And then climate control for the storage area. The storage area really is the storage building that we purchased and built on the north side of the Family Arena. It's the cinder block building that we store equipment in, other things from time to time, turf for this athletic events, that sort of thing. But that building's not climate controlled. So we wanted to have that climate controlled so that we could be able to keep materials in there that are subject to extreme temperatures and keep them cooled properly. The big one is the American Rescue Plan behind that, and we've had a lot of discussion about that. That matters before you this evening by way of the resolution to officially adopt the initial plan for these projects. But at the Family Arena, serves as a go-to spot for health emergencies and reacting to health emergencies in the county. It's really our go-to spot. And as we saw last year, as a vaccination site, vaccinating 3,500 to 4,000 people a day, an asset like that is instrumental in reacting and being prepared for public health emergencies. So under the American Rescue Plan, we're looking at replacing the roof. The roof is original from 1999, and although the roof still is in fairly decent shape, the dome roof is still in fairly decent shape, we know that it's going to need some attention very soon. The other side roofs of the structure, the flat roofs that are over like the restrooms and the concession areas, definitely need work. They're in pretty poor shape. So these funds will help fix that problem for us and give the building new life and help secure the building envelope. Air handling systems, for the most part, we have original boilers and chillers in that building, and the chillers are R22 Freon, which we all know is now liquid gold, and to a point where when we take a unit offline, we're storing the Freon and keeping it for our own use. We do that at the Family Arena. Anytime we have a system worked on, we evacuate the system, even with the ice plant. When the ice plant is not working and we are not having ice down, we evacuate the system so that we don't lose the charge because of an inadvertent puncture in a line or leak in a line that takes the whole charge out. But our air handling systems need to be updated. Parking lot maintenance, it's a huge lot, and we have some areas of that lot that get a lot of use, and that lot needs some attention, as well as the last item that we have here is public Wi-Fi. We do not have public Wi-Fi in this building right now, and any venue like that where you're going to have that large of numbers of people in the arena at one time, whether it be for an entertainment venue setting or for reacting to a public health emergency, Wi-Fi is essential in that building. So those are the 4 projects that we've identified under the ARPA funds going to the Family Arena.
This slide is just to remind you of what I was telling you, Councilman Cronin, which is that it's really the 2022s that we've looked at in terms of what do we expect the available funds are going to be and how would we fund that. We've done some of that trying to look at 2023. Is it are we getting to the point where we believe we'd be able to fund it? But we won't know that until we get closer to a budget process. But we have tried to move the funds into what we believe will be available there. And then the outer years are 24 on and 25, 26. They're really kind of still the wish list of the departments going out. So the next slide is in reference to a number of the things that I told you you don't normally see in the plan because they are existing obligations of the county. So the Turner rent that you see there, that's the building that Workforce Development and the county's storage facility is in. The Family Arena bonds and the Emergency Operations Center bonds are there. The IS maintenance contracts, the departmental maintenance contracts, the vehicle maintenance contracts, the cost allocation to the various capital funds, building repairs or maintenance, the fleet vehicle purchase every year, the interfund transfers between funds. So for instance, the Emergency Operations Center does have some capital funds that come to it. So all of that type of stuff is listed here so that you're aware of all that being out there.
I wanted to just point a couple things out on this slide also, and that is the red bar that you see on this graph represents the dollar amounts that are actually in the capital plan by year. So there's $8.7 million worth of expenditures in the 2022 year, and then you can see those numbers go on out to 2026. You'll notice there is a significant jump in 2025 and 2026, where we go from $9 million in 2024 to $27 million in 25 and almost $17 million in 2026. In 25 and 26, that's where in our capital plan, we're showing $20 million in 2025 and $10 million in 2026 for the final phase of the restoration renovation of the jail. That's money that we expect to be outside of the ARPA funds that are part of our plan that's before you tonight. But still, they're part of this plan. They're long range. They're out there in the last 2 years of this plan. And the funding for those at this point would be not determined. We're looking at most likely it would have to be some sort of bond issue to do that. But they're part of the plan, and that's why you see these numbers jump so significantly in those last 2 years. That's the last piece of the jail.
Mr. Cronin has a question.
At the risk of running out of time, I just want to go through the big stuff, okay? So besides the 57 million, I think, of COVID money, I'll call it COVID, maybe make it safe, you've also got another 90 million and two big expenditures for the Justice Center / jail, and then a bunch of small, small amounts for the jail as well. And I brought this up many times, and I'll bring it up one more time. Instead of spending all this money for bricks and mortars, which, if you add it all up, it's $150 million plus on the Justice Center / jail, maybe there's a better way to get the courts more efficient, to get folks through the system quicker, or maybe get more help so we don't get the frequent flyers that keep coming to the jail over and over again. That report that UMSL did, I think on St. Louis County Jail, I did get a chance to read that, and I'm sure it's kind of appropriate to this county as well. A lot of those folks keep going over and over and over through their county jails, and that's not only bad for those folks, but it's also pretty bad for the jail's population and what it costs to house these folks. So has that been addressed at all? Are we just committed to a path of spending $150 million in that jail? Okay.
I don't know that I think there's some duplication in that, but what you have is two entirely separate things. Well, actually, it's actually three in a sense. First thing let me address is that you have the sort of the guts of the building that has the heating and cooling systems in it, the water systems. The pipes in there had all kinds of problems. It's in 24-hour-a-day usage for 33 years now. The old office areas have been renovated to cells. They didn't have the proper drainage for them if an inmate overflows the area, so it just floods the office areas in the building. We've had that kind of damage to it. So those type of things, we have a certain amount that we're budgeting for. We've got to periodically update the boiler or fix the boiler or the air handling system, that type of thing. Then there is the ARPA funds, which is because the kitchen and the dock delivery areas were badly designed, they're badly out of date, as you saw, and so they are going to have to be replaced. Plus, we added some direct supervision, which gives us better staff to inmate ratios. It's more to our advantage to be in direct supervision, and a mental health unit, because we have so many people now who are coming in who have mental health and substance abuse problems. So using the ARPA funds to fix that big kitchen problem, that loading dock problem, and create a central elevator so we can get staff up to an emergency, and building out those new units gives us a better staff ratio. We need less staff, in other words, in that new space that's being designed. The final piece of it is the third floor is very controlled access. But because of that, it requires a lot of staff to use it. So the third phase, the part that Bob was saying is unfunded at this part, is to try to rework that space so we have better direct supervision, we need fewer staff. So in all, yes, it's a substantial amount of money over time. There's no doubt about it. You can't build probably more expensive space than to build a jail because of the security needs. So,
I mean, the jail expenditures in this capital plan are larger than I think the rest of the plan combined, okay, if you add everything up, okay?
including the infusion of
And it seems
ARPA
like
funds and
our
that.
first round of COVID money, most of it went to the jail, and now we're spending our second batch of COVID money for the jail, and then we're spending $90 million in capital improvements, taxes that'll be raised for the next 5 years in the jail. That's where I have an issue with it, okay?
Joe, $19 million of our $47 million of CARES Act money went to the jail. And that addressed a critical problem of prisoner intake in just trying to keep our building more secure from the standpoint of disease infiltration into the general population. So $19 million of the $47 million went to the jail with the McCarthy project. And it's $60 million is a big number. But you won't find a county building that's going to cost you more on a square footage basis to renovate than a jail. And that's just a fact of life. That's a fact of what incarceration standards are now. And I hope that the 90 million, if it's the 60 and the 30 that we're talking about here, I hope that's enough, quite frankly, because a lot of these expenditures go out another 5 years, 6 years, and who knows what construction costs are at that point.
Has there been any serious looking at getting these folks through the system quicker? Instead of waiting 2 or 3 years, they sit in there until they get through the courts?
But I honestly don't think that that's the answer, because you are always going to need a jail, and as our population continues to grow and more problems from other areas infiltrate our county and become part of our system of life here, the need for a smaller jail certainly is not the answer. We've blown past 400,000 citizens at this point. We'll have 500,000 citizens in the next 10, 12, 15 years, and you can't underbuild a jail facility with the dynamic that we have here in St. Charles County. I don't want to be sitting somewhere 10 years or 15 years from now and having put $40 million in a jail and then have somebody tell the county residents that the jail's too small. You can't do that.
Going back to the St. Louis County report, it said that annual admissions to the jail decreased by 40%. okay, from 2010 to 2019, but the stays increased by 77%, okay? So they're taking less inmates in and they're keeping them longer, and that's why you got to have a bigger jail in St. Louis County. Oh, I don't know if we're having the same thing. I wish we had numbers like this before we spend $200 million. I like to make sure there's not an alternative, okay? I mean, that's just my word on it. Okay?
Mr. Brazel?
I got a question on the 60 million we're spending on the jail. How is this CARES Act money? How is this related to COVID when we were talking about remodeling the jail prior to COVID? So isn't this kind of a farce to sit there and say this is all COVID? We should, oh my God, let's spend it because of COVID. I don't quite understand how that's supposed to work.
So the CARES Act funds that were spent on the second floor, part of the purpose of the CARES Act funds was to deal with situations like jails where you had an inmate population who was in close proximity to each other, where the staff and the guards and the incoming police officers were in close proximity to people that they had no idea what their situation or exposure was. And so we ran that by Treasury as one of the things that we were looking at doing, and they found it acceptable. So we have negative air, we have the ability to keep people on that floor for 2 weeks, regardless of whether it's COVID or some other disease in the future, before we move them into general population, so that we don't have issues with the federal courts and inmates getting sick and all of that. So now ARPA, which is the American Rescue Plan funds, has a similar provision in it in terms of jails. They have they have a number of categories in that act, if you've had any chance to look at it, but one of them is disadvantaged populations. They
Well, I guess
call
the
them,
question
like
is
people
that
in jails.
we have on the agenda to talk about the capital plan, but he was talking about the COVID money, but the COVID money is under the resolution, so technically, we should be talking about the resolution when it comes on the floor.
Well, it's
So-
also in the capital plan, Council.
So you have the COVID money in with the capital plan, is that what you're saying?
Sure, we have all the fund sources in the capital plan.
I don't want to run out of time because folks did want to talk about the protocol in schools, and so I don't want to burn up all the time because there are a lot of people here to talk about that as well. So
I
if we're
get it,
talking
but
about
the original purpose for this session, before you asked for the COVID stuff to be added, that was the original purpose
No, I understand, but
of this
that's why,
work session.
but if the
So-
resolution's on the agenda,
Right,
then that's
but-
when we need to talk about it, not now.
I
That's what
get
I'm
it, but
saying.
what we're talking about is capital funds and how we're going to spend them. So that's what we're doing right now.
I have no other questions on the capital plan, okay, that we can address down the road, and just with the emphasis that it is a plan, so, we have opportunity to, it's fluid, it's flexible, and we can change as we go.
That's right.
Do you have more to present?
We do, actually.
Mike, why do we got to sit here and listen to all this when we know that this is an attempt to burn up time because you don't want to talk about this COVID stuff? I mean, come on, I'm serious.
So Joe, before you ever asked for this, that's why we did this.
We do this
And we've
every
asked
year.
staff to put
It's in
together
the
this.
book. It's in the book, and it's like Joe said, these are just, this is a plan, a 5-year plan that we have plenty of time to look over and go over. Why are we going through all the numbers? This capital plan is less than it's been in the past years.
Why don't we do 5 more minutes, and then still got a half hour? That work?
Keep going.
Facility maintenance plan, portion of the capital plan. As many of the council know, that we have our facilities, a lot of them were built in the 90s. So we asked Christine to take a look at, realistically, over the next 5 years, how much do you need to continue to maintain our existing infrastructure? And that number comes out to be about $5 million a year. The previous slide showed that the capital fund brings in about 14 million, so 5 million is a significant investment of that 14 million just to maintain our existing building infrastructure. That 5 million breaks down in about 2 million into maintenance, so that's just replacing run-the-mill items each and every day. This council chamber, I apologize for being warm. There's 5 air conditioner units that keep this chamber cool. 2 of them are malfunctioning. Those type of projects on a daily basis need to be done. Major replacements, once again, HVAC systems and those type items. and then building modifications. So as you have, example would be the elections building, when we had absentee ballot. Kurt Barr asked that we modify some walls, change some electrical fixtures there in order to make that space function better. So generally, we spend about $1 million a year. Unfortunately, this plan, and at least 22, what we physically can afford, is not $5 million a year. And that's really the main takeaway of this slide, is that in order for us just to keep the lights on and that basic fundamental, we need about $5 million. This plan, we're programming about 3.2 is what we're seeking for the council. So we're running short about $1.8 million. Next slide, please. So what are some strategies? Some high-level strategies of what we're trying to do to try to stretch those capital dollars and to be able to bridge that gap in the 1.8 is we're looking at an energy service company to help implement replacement and reduce operation costs and maintenance. We spend about $1.3 million a year in electricity. So an energy service company can look at what type of lights are we running? Can we replace more of these LEDs? Can we look at how we replace our HVAC systems to get better energy efficiency, which will reduce our operating costs and also help us as we plan out our long-term investments? We also are looking for the council, we'll be presenting to the council in the next few weeks, actually it's probably about a month down the road, a real estate master plan. So we will look at the amount of square foot that we're actually occupying and whether we're using that space wisely. So is there a way that we can maybe consolidate? Should we improve some of our relationships of departments that work together so that we can reduce that square foot or at least better optimize the use of that square foot? A key part of that's in the courts. Councilman Cronin mentioned how can we move the court system faster? Well, we have new judges that are being provided to St. Charles County, so that's new courtrooms, new offices. That building's only so big. How can we maximize that space?
John, could you move that microphone a little closer?
I sure can, sorry. Looking at the 2022, I mentioned there's about $3.8 million, or $3.2 million, excuse me. The maintenance is really focusing upon life safety. That's we're looking at our fire suppression systems in the buildings, making some replacements there, parking lot repairs and renovations, roofing projects at the jail, and just routine basic capital needs. That's what you're going to see in the plan as you go through the facilities section, just those normal $30,000, $50,000 expenditures, ice makers, refrigerators, those type things. Major renovations, 1.2. Part of that is replacing some of the HVAC system in this building. As we know in this chamber, we also have some repairs in the admin building. We are pushing off any building modifications. We're going to continue to tell the departments that stay put. We need to complete that real estate investment plan. Future needs, major system replacements. Once again, to get up to that annual investment about $5 million a year, we're at that 3.2. We know we have needs of replacing the HVAC systems at the court, jail, PD, juvenile, pet adoption. A lot of these units are that R22. They are at the end of life. We've just did so much work back in the 90s as it kind of grew. We also have various projects, roofing projects, parking lot, generators. Once again, those run-of-the-mill things that are going to continue to be needs as we need to fund. The jail, we spent a lot of time on this, but I just want to point out really that last bullet is that regardless of the investment that's made in upgrading the kitchen and other things that are needed to improve the physical plant and move us towards a different model in the jail, there will still be ongoing needs. We still have roof replacements, we still have tuck pointing that needs to be done, we still have air handling equipment, all of those fundamental infrastructure within that existing building that's running 33 years old still have repair and maintenance that we're going to address regardless of the amount of money that we spend on upgrading and improving that facility. The courthouse, we had one additional courtroom that was built in 2021. We have a second one to be constructed in 22. There'll also be a need for some conference space. Once again, we're trying to squeeze as much usable space out of that building as we can, but eventually that building is going to be tight, and that's why we need to look at our real estate. And with that, I guess.
We can, we can obviously,
Is there any high points that you want to hit through this
no. I mean, as I talked to you about maintaining the infrastructure and hardware on a regular schedule, I guess the one thing that I would point out is where it says updating camera and door access hardware in all the county facilities, that's really our basic security package. To be able to now know where people are moving through, that every door isn't standing open in this day and age is kind of a requirement. So, we have all the employees on an electronic badging system. They'll be using those to move in and out of secure spaces rather than just having like a general code that everybody has, 1111. It won't work that way anymore. So we'll be able to track who's moving in and out of the areas, and we'll be able to review camera footage if there's an activity that needs to be reviewed.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? Anything you want to add? Thanks for putting that together. So we'll move on to bullet point number 2, which, Mr. Cronin, you asked for the consent agenda items to be put on.
Yeah. I don't care how we do it, okay, whether we do it like Mike Klinghammer, plan on doing it by ordinance where everything over X amount of money has to go through the ordinance process in 2 readings, or if we figure out another way to do it with council rules or whatever. I don't want to put a lot of extra burden on the counselor's office. But the long and short of it is we need more than 3 days over a weekend to look at these purchases. There's $1.5 million worth of consent agenda items on here, and I venture to say we don't know about them, okay? For instance, the radio bid. All radio systems are Motorola. Why are we spending $500,000 with Nokia, which is a foreign company, when there's a Motorola, our system's Motorola with a U.S. company? The work on the $200,000 on the administration building, that's a patch job with a 6/1000th of an inch piece of plastic, PVC plastic, that somewhere between a trash bag and duct tape. Why don't we consider a metal roof where you don't have any problem ever again? There are some metal roofs up there. A month ago, we spent $400,000 on a half acre of ground for a highway project, and nobody brought it up, mentioned it, or anything. The system we have right now, it is our duty as council members to watch the expenditures of this county, and the system that we have right now, where we get the information on a Friday afternoon, and we have to try to jam it all into the weekend and make inquiries on Mondays and talk about the council, it's not working if you want to do your job right. So I would suggest working with the administration, however we want to do it, but this is a lot of money, and if we have 2 readings for these simple little bills that really don't do anything, yet we don't do 2 readings for millions of dollars that we expend. And that's the point I want to make. So if the administration's got some ideas how to do this, it's fine. Typically, how it's been done in the last 10 years is I frantically read this stuff, cram it in all the weekend. I send emails out to John Greifsue or whatever, or Ryan Graham. We try to answer it, but it's a system that's not working well. And maybe we need to delegate this a little bit. Maybe everybody needs to pick apart a little bit of it. But I mean, I consistently see us spending a lot of money on stuff. Example, the police department. We've got $17,000 for a 120-gallon water tank heater. Most homes got 50, 60-gallon water heaters that cost, $300, $400, $500. Our facilities department, if they can't put a water heater in, they got a problem, because I can put a water heater in my own home, okay? So, I mean, when I see $17,800 for a 119-gallon water heater, I'm thinking, holy cow, why that much money? But allowing 3 days to have questions for this is a lot. The other thing is, for instance, on the water, it costs a lot of money to keep all that hot water hot. So besides spending $71,000 for the heaters, we got the energy costs involved there too. So do we really need storage for 500 plus gallons of hot water at the police station? Maybe we do, maybe we don't, but there's a simple way to do it. You get the water bill and you see what the demand for the water heaters are. How much water do they really use? So that's the kind of stuff that I think if we're going to do a good job on, we got to do more than 3 days. So how you want to do it is fine. I can put together an ordinance like Mike Klinghammer was working on. I hate to load up Rory with more work. If there's a way we can do, I think there's a way we can do it with council rules, okay? Some way like that that'll be more efficient. And That's all I got to say about that. So Joanne, if you want to work with that, it's fine. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's tough to do, Steve.
I do.
Okay?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, obviously, you're in charge of your rules, and whatever you tell us to do, we'll do. I feel bad about the one that prompted this, because it was about the cameras. And they had been keeping me up to speed, and I didn't realize that we probably weren't doing a good enough job of talking to you as this process was going along. I should have just held it.
No, I had no issues with those.
I do that all the time. I get stuff at the last minute like that, and
Yeah.
you can ask them. I just send it back, said, we're going to wait and do this. I've got questions about this, and I will try to do a better job, and hopefully we won't have this problem again. If we do, or even if we don't, if you want to do something else, that's certainly
And
up to the
if you have a situation where you say, hey, we got to pass this thing, you guys got 2 or 3 days to do it.
Yeah, we had
do
one
it.
or though,
If we-
that happened one time, I think,
If
and
we
you
get
guys
that,
were cooperative.
that's understandable.
Yeah.
But if it's items we've been working on buying for a year or so, I would just like to have more than 72 hours over a weekend to review this stuff.
I will
Okay?
do everything I can to make sure it doesn't happen again.
All right, I got you on tape. Thank you.
And the chairman asked us, he's talked to us this past week about the fact that he'd like to have a verbal heads up in writing, in a sense, about even before the technicality of the bid is in, that we have something in play.
Mr. Hammond?
Well, I think we already have a process in place. It's just people on the council need to use it. And that's if you don't feel comfortable about something, ask for it to be tabled till the next meeting. I don't have a problem with that, and I don't think anybody on the council does. I don't know that we need to create new rules. I think we just need to use the ones that we already have.
Any other thoughts on that one? Okay.
The idea, though, instead of tabling like this tonight, tabling 3 things for next meeting, is to be more efficient, okay? If we get the information quicker, we won't have the need for tabling. okay?
One of the things I've asked administration to do is give us a heads up on things that are coming down the pike, even when they don't have all the details worked out, so at least we know it's coming, and we have a pretty good idea of what they're working on, so you can get a ballpark idea of what things look like, how much they're going to cost, what are they going to be used for. If you see something that looks unusual in an expense for something, like when you're pointing out on the hot water heaters, then we can talk with facilities and we can find out, is there a particular reason why we would have this? It may be a particular placement, it may be a particular spec, there may be a number of different reasons that would make it cost that way. But if we find that out coming down the road, then we're not surprised when you get it, you've got a chance to look at it. And I think administration is going to work with us to make sure that we get a better time frame, especially on the bigger ticketed items. With that, is there anything else on consent agenda discussion? With that, we will move on to COVID-19 protocols in schools. Mr. Brazel, you asked for this one.
Okay, I did. I would like to start with, I had sent out multiple emails asking the council to have this conversation before school started. And then with last Monday at New Melle and Daniel Boone school starting with mask mandates and all this other stuff, I just wanted to refer to the resolution that we put out in May of 2021, where it says clearly, and this is the intent of the council, that St. Charles County has not issued any mask mandates and under current law does not have any authority to order contact tracing and/or quarantines within school districts. And St. Charles County Council believes that consideration must be given to the wishes of parents in determining and wearing a face mask by students. And so, Donna, can you put this up there, this quarantine thing? Or, I need a copy, or do you got one? Joe, can you?
Yeah, here's one. Here, Jim.
So there has been, the parents in a lot of the districts that we represent are very, very upset. There is a group out here that's got 1,500 followers. It's Free the Smiles. Lindsay, that's your group. And so the point is, guys, is they are doing contact tracing, they are doing quarantines, and that's a big, big problem. These mask mandates in these communist school districts is a big, big problem. Francis Howe is out of control. They are absolutely out of control with their mandates and what they're doing with CRT and everything else, but we're talking about COVID, so I'll stick to that. So this is against the wishes of the council. and this is against the intent of the council. Now, Mr. Ullman's going to give his perspective, and I'm going to respectfully disagree with him, because this is the health department that's doing this, and we said, leave it up to the schools, leave it up to the parents, and that's the problem. So, if I may, I do have a couple people who wanted to, I told them like 3 to 4 minutes that would explain their perspective from these parent groups, and then Dr. Bob Honor, because the administration is going to say that they're following the law, which isn't true, not in my perspective. It's not true, and nor I think Senator Honor don't believe that's true either, because the problem is here is our county keeps punting it, saying it's the legislators. The legislators keep saying, no, this is the health department, coming from the health department. So Mike and council, the conversation needs to be had, and we need to know exactly who's going to take responsibility. Now, if the administration wants to do these by calling them recommendations, which is kind of a cop-out, because if they made them requirements, then they'd have to go to a vote of us. So make them requirements, and let's vote on it. Let's get it out. But making them, the bureaucrats in the school districts and administrators want to fall back on these recommendations because that's all they have. And this is crap. We shouldn't have even sent these out. We should have not gave them any recommendations whatsoever. Because that's what they're doing. So we're right back at where we were last year because of these recommendations. So if it's okay, the pleasure of council, we got limited time, but
Well, I think so you didn't talk to me about having anybody come speak.
we're typically at work
during this-
sessions, we allow witnesses.
Typically, you would let the chair know before the fact,
Mike, you were
and
against
you
this to
would ask
begin
for
with. Why
that.
would I even, you've been against this from the start, having this conversation.
That
So,
is not true.
I
That
get
is-
the email, so let's focus on what we need to do here,
So-
okay?
So let's start with Bob Hoyk, has got a presentation.
Okay, I'm gonna
because
let
you-
Bob do his, this is a council meeting, not an
So-
executive meeting, so we'll let him give him about
So-
3 minutes, but then,
So with all due respect, I'm the chair.
yeah,
And you
right.
don't get to make the rules of how this is going to go forward, and you don't get to run the meeting. And that's exactly what you're doing right now.
Mike, yeah, these people
So
come
what
up-
we're going to do is
No, no,
we're
these
going to
people-
go through what you said was you asked for, you wanted to know what are the COVID protocols in schools is what you requested. So that's what you requested, and I asked them to put together a presentation to talk about what are the things that we have. So Bob, if you would please, move forward with that.
When do we get to talk about it?
Very briefly.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
people are going to get to speak during the regular comment session of the regular meeting, correct?
Yes.
Okay, good.
You're going to get to speak later on tonight. You have a public comment part that you get to talk. And I have a feeling we're going to extend public comment, and we're going to allow everybody the opportunity to talk who wants to talk. So I'm not trying to shut you down. It's just, that's not how we do work sessions. It
We do
gets
have
agreed-
witnesses, Mike, we always had witnesses, we've
Joe,
always
you
done
know
that.
how, Joe, you've been here
Mike,
for
I've
20
been
years.
here 20 years, and I know exactly how it works.
We're not doing this. Bob, go ahead.
Of course we're not doing this, we
Briefly,
don't want the people to talk.
State regulation requires the county to do a couple things: isolate infected people with contagious diseases, and then quarantine contacts, which is where the contact tracing comes in. That applies to everybody: businesses, individuals, schools, other governments. The county has no authority over the schools beyond those very narrow areas, the isolation, contact tracing, and quarantining. And that is due to Article 6, Section 18C of the Missouri Constitution, which gives the charter county its powers. That section also exempts the county, or prohibits the county from exercising any legislative power over schools other than in those narrow areas which the legislature is delegated to the state public health department, DHSS, and then through their rules, they then delegate to the local public health authority. For the county to have any more or less authority over the schools would require a change of state law sufficient to override that constitutional prohibition of the county charter.
So-
That's it.
So Bob, can I ask?
Go ahead.
Now, Mr. Chairman, if I've got up here, if I could get it in a form where you can read it very quickly, and I'm just going to pretty much follow up on what Bob said, because I know there's people here that don't approve of the law as it exists today. And we
Right.
can have a debate about what the law is today. And I think the first thing you need to look at, and this is the language from the Constitution. We've got two issues here. We've got the mask mandate that the schools are imposing, and we've got the contact tracing issue. Now, as far as the mask mandate is concerned, our health department could have issued a mask mandate 18 months ago. We had no interest in doing it then. We have no interest in doing it now. But since we did, if we had issued that, the school districts would have been, it would have been they would have had no choice. They would have had to abide by it, and that's what happened in St. Louis County. So there's a lot of school board members wish that we had just told them all what to do. But I believe, and I think everybody here believes, that we elect school boards to decide what's best for those schools. So the county may mandate, but we can't direct the schools what to do. The voters in the Charter County, as Bob said, we have certain powers. And Councilman Brazel knows this because he used them very effectively to get rid of red light cameras, okay? And you can see if we go to the, again, this particular one, no, stay where you are. This one here, again, Bob did this. The charter may provide for the vesting and exercise of legislative power pertaining to any and all services and functions of any municipality or political subdivision, like the cities here, which we did with the red light cameras, except school districts, okay? So with the red light cameras, the legislature hadn't spoken. You all didn't have the power to do it, but you had the power to put it on the ballot, and the people of the county had the ability to tell all of our cities no red light cameras. Unfortunately, perhaps, in the eyes of some, we don't have the ability to do the same thing with regard to the school districts and their ability to do a mask mandate for their students. Now, go to the second, and I don't know, you know, this could always be changed, but I think there's a long history of local control in our schools, and I think it's going to be very difficult to change the Constitution and allow us to have that kind of authority over our schools. Now, this is from the statute, and again, look what it says. This state that shall not, that would be the amendment. And that's why we're doing this. I want to show you what needs to be changed in order for you folks to get us to be able to do what you want us to do. State regulations supersede local rules, okay? Additional local rules. And that's basically what the statute today
What state
says.
regulations are you talking about, Steve?
Pardon me?
What state regulations are you talking about?
This is
No,
192.
where are these
192
regulations coming from?
The Missouri Constitution is what he's
192-290
showing you.
RSMO. See the number up there in the upper left-hand corner?
I'm talking about this 12-page.
I'm getting to it. All rules and regulations authorized and made by the Department of Health and Senior Services in accordance with this chapter shall supersede.
Shall not supersede.
Well, that's the amendment you would need. Today it says it shall supersede as to those matters to which the chapter relates all local ordinances, rules, and regulations, which we could do.
But these are not requirements. These are recommendations. So why are we giving them to the school districts when the council's intent was not to do
Because
that?
you'll see in just a minute. Their rules and regulations, and that's where we got those that you're holding up. We got them directly from the state. Now, obviously, this could be changed, and if you put in the word "not," then we would have the ability, the council would have the ability to pass rules and regulations that are in conflict with what the state has given us. But right now, we can't. We can go ahead and go beyond the state, but we can't do anything in conflict with the state. I think, you know, the people in Jefferson City could have changed this the last session, but I think everybody was under the impression this was all going to be over by September. And so anyway, that's what would have to be changed. Now, pursuant to this statute, 192-290, it authorizes rules, and go to the next slide. This is the rules and regulation of the Department of Youth and Senior Services. It's the Missouri Code of State Regulations, and you can see here, it specifically says quarantine and isolation practices, closing of schools and places of public and private assembly. And it says, under number 1, the local health authority, and then it names some others, but that's what applies to us, shall, right now it says shall require isolation of patient or animal with a communicable disease. Now, if you want to give us the discretion to do that or not do it, you can change that shall to may, and then we can do whatever the council decides it wants to do. But right now it says shall, and if it says shall, we need to do what they tell us. And what you're showing them there, Joe, that is directly word for word from what DHSS has sent us. And when I first got it, we rewrote it like we did, made it look like last year's, but it's directly from that. Originally, they put what's the federal? Huh? They had based on CDC guidelines and state guidelines. I said, take the CDC out. They don't have any jurisdiction over us. The state may be looking at the CDC, but it's all we have to listen to is the state. So everything in there is from the state. The state gave it to us. We put it together, sent it to the schools. The very next day, the state amended it and made it, I think, better, okay? Made it a little more reasonable. And the day after that, we amended ours. So if the state wants, we don't need to wait for the legislature. If the governor wants his people to make it, to change this, they could change it. And they did that, remember, they did it last year, and you got this, you put this up, this is very interesting, on the number of people that were quarantined. And if you remember, last December, the schools were complaining, and we had a really serious problem. We had too many people out of school because they were quarantined. And what happened? People went to Jeff City. The governor got together with DESE and DHSS, and they changed the rules. And they said that if you have to quarantine, you can still go to school. And you can see here, there was thousands of kids, once that was changed, that otherwise would have had to stay home that were allowed to go to school. And I think that's what everybody in this room, up here and out there, we want to get our kids in school and keep them there.
Mr. Chairman, I did invite Senator Honor here because me and Steve had a conversation today, and we respectfully disagree that it's state law issues. And Bob Honor wanted to make some comments on this because we've talked about this, and you can't, he was going to just go over some of the stuff with his state senator for our area, what his opinion is, and then I want to reiterate on this because, again, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Mr. Ullman, but I totally disagree with our position. I think it's lack of leadership and we're not taking a strong position.
Joe, what language do you disagree with?
Bob, Mr. Honor, do you mind?
Hang on, Mr. Cronin.
I read the Constitution over the weekend too, and I'm not an attorney, but I know how to read. And there is a section that I think is applicable too. I was always told that we get our power as a charter county from the state. Correct? That's a true thing.
From the Constitution?
Yes, in the Constitution. Well, Article 3, Section 40 of that Constitution has a section about limitation of passage of local and special laws. And it clearly states right in there, one of the prohibitions of the legislature, and therefore us as well, since we've got our power from them, is regulating the management of public schools. My contention is whether it's a mask mandate or a quarantine or wherever, we're managing public schools. I don't know anything about public schools, okay? I went to Catholic school. My kids went to Catholic school, and they're all long grown. Those school boards, those school administrations, those school principals who make those decisions, we need to stay the heck out of it. I know there's more things in the Constitution that you can look different ways, but it's pretty clear. It says there's limitations of passage of local special order laws that regulate the management of public schools. Senator Onder might be able to tell us more about that since I think he's an attorney as well. So go from there.
So we've only got about 4 minutes left. Senator Onder, do you want to come up and I just want everybody to understand, and I think Senator Onder would agree with this because he's been in Jeff City. You don't just surprise the chairman of a meeting and say, I'm going to throw all these people out there without saying anything to anybody. You wouldn't allow that in Jeff City, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful for all of you, but no one on the council was told that we were going to do that. Normally, when we do a work session, if we are going to do something like that, it's agreed upon ahead of time, so everybody knows. So we're going to do public comment, and you're going to have an opportunity to speak at public comment. But with all due respect, Senator, I'm going to let you speak.
Well, first of all, Mike, I had to beg and scratch to have this work session, so let's be real, all right?
So you got your session, you're taking the
Let's
senator's
just
time
go,
right
let's
now.
go, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Elam, and thank you, members of the council. Councilman Brazel called me earlier today to try to clarify a little bit because as I think I see it, and as a number of parents and school board members who've contacted me over the last several months, there seems to be a lot of confusion about what state law requires and what the St. Charles County Health Department requires and is able to require legally of our public schools. And I think that's led to a lot of this confusion about masking and isolating and quarantining, contact tracing. I think some of what Executive Ailman put up here, I think would make my point, which is this, that we, St. Charles County, don't have control over what the public school districts do. That is, by charter, by constitution, reserved to those school districts. And I think it's also, I also think there's a lot of confusion here about what exactly is required by state law. The section, I guess it's not still up here, but it's up here. The local health authority, the director of the Department of Health and Senior Services, or the director's designated representative shall require isolation of a patient or animal with a communicable disease, quarantine of contacts, concurrent or terminal disinfection, etc. Now, shall require that in what cases, in what diseases? We don't do that for the common cold, we don't do it for influenza, we don't do it for hand, foot, and mouth disease, we don't do it for viral gastroenteritis, we don't do it for strep throat, all communicable diseases. So the question is there something that has changed about state law? Is there a regulation by the Department of Health and Senior Services or by the governor? Or does this guidance document that the DESE and the Department of Health and Senior Services issued, does that somehow, is that prescriptive? Does that have force of law? And I would tell you that the answer to all of those questions is absolutely not. Because if you read this literally, then our Department of Health, St. Charles County Department of Health, they should, every case of strep throat that I diagnose, every case of influenza I diagnose, every rhinovirus common cold infection that I diagnose, we should have Demetrius Chapman or his successor be hunting down every one of those contacts and tracing them and quarantining them. All I'm saying is that, and I wanted to make sure I hadn't missed anything, so this afternoon, after talking to Councilman Brazel, I called Robert Nodell. As most of you know, he is the acting director of the Department of Health and Senior Services. Before that, he was the assistant chief of staff to the governor, and in a couple days, he'll be going back to the governor's office. And I asked him, am I missing something here? Because as I read this DESE guidance that our health department is essentially copied, essentially Xeroxed, kind of rearranged the format. And it says, yes, all kids 2 and older have to be masked at school. Is that law? Is that state law? Is that a rule? Is that a regulation? Does that have the power of law anywhere in the state of Missouri? And he said, Senator, absolutely not. The only thing in there that's at all prescriptive, that's all required, is DESE's reiteration of the fact that the CDC mandates wearing of masks on school buses. Period, end of story. So anyway, you all can do what you want to do in this work session, but I don't think the problem is here at the council. I think the problem is that, and I don't know whether rightly or wrong, I mean, I don't know whether maliciously or they're just confused, but I believe the St. Charles County Health Department is sending guidance to the school districts, giving them the impression that various things such as quarantining cases and keep them out of school for 10 days, that somehow that's mandated by state law. That's not true. And I would just say, just leave you with one last thought. As a physician, I will tell you, I've been saying since last summer of 2020, that the idea of contact tracing and quarantining exposures to cases is long, the horse is long out of the barn. With many tens of thousands of cases in this state, millions nationwide, it's almost for sure that every person in this room within the last week has been within 6 feet of a, quote, COVID case. And so if we want to shut down our economy, if we want to shut down our county, if we want to shut down our state, we want to shut down our schools, we never want our kids to go back to school, well then let's quintuple our resources in contacting, tracing kids and sending them home from school for no good reason. And again, I'd remind you that school-age kids have a 99.995% survival rate from COVID-19. Teachers and staff who want to be protected can get vaccinated, which is not as protective as we thought it was 6 months ago, but it prevents hospitalization and death. So anyway, I didn't ask to interrupt the work session, Mr. Chair, but I just wanted to share my perspective as to what the law is here in the state of Missouri. I was the author of House Bill 271, what I call the anti-COVID tyranny language. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. Yes, sir.
May I inquire the senator? Where it says shall quarantine, what does that mean then?
Well,
My understanding, and of course, I didn't know anything about any of this until it all started, but my understanding is once we had a disease identified, and apparently the governor did add COVID-19 to the list at 99 CSR 20-20, and that's what prompted this. But when that happened, nobody called me and asked me what we should do or whatever. They had been, there was a quarantine procedure for any a disease that was identified by the state, and that's what they started doing, and I think that's what the state has continued to require. But again, they did last year. They made some exceptions, and I'd be glad if they made some more. Do you think we can convince the governor to clarify those things? And there's no requirement on a mask. What the governor's rules do, unfortunately, is they create an advantage to people who do wear masks, and you may not like that, but there's no requirement in there. If there is, please show me, because I didn't see it.
Well, I am not aware of the governor at any point, mandating that COVID-19 cases be isolated and quarantined. I'm not aware of any such order. If I were suspicious that such a thing existed, I would have asked Mr. Nodell this afternoon, but...
Well, see, it's right up there. It says, shall require isolation of a patient.
Well, Executive Ailman, that says of communicable disease. So we don't do this, it's clearly discretionary, because we don't do this...
They added COVID as a communicable disease back last year.
Okay, I'll have to look that up, because if I knew about such a reg, I sit on the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules, and I would have challenged it within the comment period. So, and I don't know, did it have an expiration date? Okay, and,
we'll be glad to work with you if you want to try to get the governor to give us some more leeway.
Again, I think at this point, I guarantee you're not contact tracing and isolating 1 out of 200 COVID cases in St. Charles County right now. I can't imagine. We'll go, the data that you've shown a number of times, including yesterday, Steve, about the number of COVID cases in St. Charles County, I guarantee you your Department of Health cannot show you that each and every one of those cases has been contact traced and isolated. I guarantee you that. So I think already we're not doing it. I'll look up the state reg and see whether that's the case. Yes, and I will. I will talk if that is the case, that that anachronism is still, which, again, may have made sense to some people last April, but certainly doesn't make sense anymore. The only place it's being done is in our schools, and it's being used to deprive our kids of an education.
Okay. All right, so with that, I appreciate it, Senator. Thanks very much. We are past our work session time. Obviously, there are people who have other issues who are crowding into the room. It's going to be a full house. So we're going to take 5 minutes for everybody to change over. And Father, I appreciate you being here to pray for us. As you can look around the room, we could use it. It's going to happen. So with that, we will close the work session. We'll take 5, and we will start back at 7:12.